Brian Davis is our speaker today from People Plus. He's the safety director. Brian is a native of Princeton. He left for a short period of time. He was in the military. He is now back in our community, and he's going to talk about safety in the workplace, workman's comp. If you have any questions, I'm sure we'll have a question and answer. I hope you all enjoy it.
Well, thank you for the introduction. Thank you for having me, Sandra. Thanks for inviting me to speak. I'm pretty passionate about safety, our workforce, in our work environment. And safety across all industries. It's not just industrial or construction. I mean, there's office safety. We all probably know that. So just bear with me, and hopefully for some of us it'll be a good refresher, and for others it'll be things out there as well. I wanted to start with OSHA's top 10 2012 violations. And before I get started, I want everyone, without getting political, to understand that within the past 4 years, OSHA has shifted its focus. OSHA used to be, prior to 4 or 5 years ago, more a type department. Since then, it has become an enforcement type department, meaning they are looking to cite and they are looking to fine, and they have cut down on their educational programs, are more focused on the enforcement side. So this can affect all workers across the board. All also, briefly talk about the global harmonized system. Has anyone heard of that before? Everyone knows what an MSDS sheet that for safety. It all falls under hazard communication, and the law says that if you have an employee or someone that comes into your workplace, by law they have the right to know what hazards are in that workplace, and those hazards must be communicated to them. Well, manufacturers and distributors, they could write the MSDS sheet however they wanted to. There was no rhyme or reason to it. It wasn't standardized. So this global harmonized system that is being implemented, and I'll explain it in a little bit greater detail later. The first implementation step happens this year, at the end of this year. That affects every workplace, every business. So if you have an employee that comes in and you have your little orientation, into how you do business, and you say, over here we have some MSDSs and it's Windex, or it's, because believe it or not, correction fluid has an MSDS on it. Or if you're making Coca-Cola, I know we drink it, but if you're if you are Coca-Cola, they have an MSDS on Coca-Cola because it's actually a corrosive. You can pour it on your windshield, you can put it on your battery terminal post in your car, and it'll take the grime and the dirt off and heat it away. So it's actually a corrosive. So I'll discuss that a little bit. I'm going to talk very, very briefly about injury and illness prevention program. That's another one of OSHA's we want to make this happen this year. And then beginning January, a couple months after January. But if your company or your business carries workers' comp insurance, you have an rating based off of the past experience in safety in your workforce. The way they look at that has changed from January 1 to 2013. From January 1, 2013 on. That will be good for some of y'all. That will be bad for some of y'all. Potentially. It just depends. So I'll talk a little bit about that. And that, when I start talking experience, I break my job down into 2 different functions. Prevention of accidents and safety, and then loss control. What happens if, unfortunately, someone does get injured? How do you manage that loss to get that employee back, get him the care that he needs, but also obviously protect the interest of the company too. So here are OSHA's top 10 for 2012. Fall protection. It outlines when fall protection is required. It's designed to protect employees on walking and working surfaces with an unprotected side or edge above 6 feet. Last year, they cited 7,250 citations just for fall protection. Hazard communication. This is a great slide right here, not just because in the box with nobody with a key to get to it. But communication was the two-sided last year. That goes hand in hand with that new globally harmonized system. So I would imagine that 2013 hazard, or by the end of 2013, hazard communication becomes the #1 side violation. But it addresses the hazards of chemicals in the workplace and their community to employees. We've all seen that, like that guy outside the window, and the dude is actually like a belt, keep it from falling. That's awesome. Scaffolding required to protect workers from falling 10 feet, cited almost 4,000 times. Respiratory protection is kind of near and dear to my heart. I was on a national working group for respiratory protection, but it directs employers on establishing and maintaining a respiratory protection program. Ladders covers general requirements for all ladders, once again cited or violations identified almost well over 2,300. Machinery and machine guarding, this kills me. There's a saying, for those of us in the safety business, you have low-hanging fruit. How many has like a workshop or knows somebody that has a shop in their garage or whatever, and they have a grinder? We've all seen that little grinding wheel. I guarantee you, OSHA can go into any shop, anywhere, and cite you on machine to machine guarding, because they actually have an actual unit of measure of how far away that shield is supposed to be on that grinding wheel. So again, that could even be higher. But that covers, and when I say machinery, that's just not for a grinding wheel. That's any type of machinery. Covers the guarding machinery to protect operators and other employees. Powered industrial trucks, like the forklift that's flipped over in the picture, or if you have one of those cherry pickers where somebody gets on and raises the entire person up to get a box or whatever, that's considered a powered industrial truck. Electrical wiring method, it covers the grounding of electrical equipment. Say you're at a construction site or whatever, you're running generators, all of that has to be grounded, that type of thing. Lockout, tagout, it outlines the minimum performance requirements for the control of hazardous energy during maintenance, a little over 1,500 times. Of note, in that, Kentucky OSHA actually will not accept just a tagout. So if any of y'all are involved with that, they actually have went a step further and they require a lockout. So they do not accept the tagout portion. If you don't have a state program, you can just follow the federal program and you can tag it out, and somebody can come in behind and say, yes, I know this has been tagged out, I will not operate it. Kentucky actually requires some type of locking mechanism. Electrical general requirements, it covers the general safety requirements for designing electrical systems. So not so much construction oriented, but all of those machines working in the industries, and they have the different electrical power. It covers that, where you set your high voltage boxes up, etc. So any questions on OSHA's top 10? Again, the key point I would take away from that is, and it affects everyone in here, if you have an employee other than yourself and you deal with commerce, is hazard communication. You must train them by December 1, 2013 on the new globally harmonized system. So what is the new global harmonized system? Well, while that picture is true, or at least I feel like that, that's not necessarily what it is. It does cost an arm and a leg now. Gas does. So why do we come into this whole globally harmonized system? What was wrong with our standard system, the way we do it in the U.S.? Well, the world's smaller now. So the globally harmonized system was originally developed within the United Nations as a way to improve commerce between countries. And that became challenging, as you can see from these little quips below. You're invited to take advantage of the chambermaid. Well, that means something to us, but that was actually a quote in a Japanese hotel. They saw it as nothing wrong with that, or nothing implied, or no mind strayed, or anything like that. So then, teeth extracted by the latest Methodist. So that should actually be by the latest methods, and again, that was found in Hong Kong dentists. This manager has personally passed all the water served here in a Mexican hotel. So that's why on the chemical side and on the hazard communication, they realized we need to be able to communicate these hazards globally. Simple term. So It was agreed upon at an international level by governments, industry, and labor. This was actually adopted by the UN in 2002. The original goal was 2008. Obviously, we are 2018 now, so we're way behind schedule. So the government, just as an example, Canada's federal, or however I guess they call it federal, but their safety program, 5 years advanced as far as the U.S. is. That's how much farther along they are in their safety program. And why do we hope that picture doesn't fit anything? And my wife takes me around the house with a trying to make that. It's fun. Why do we need to change that communication standard? It increases the quality and consistency of information passed to our employees, meaning they better understand it, which is that second bullet. It enhances their comprehension. It allows people to access chemical information more easily and efficiently. It minimizes the burden on employers to create multiple labels. How many of y'all have seen all those different little, and I'm sure you have probably, or marathon, right? I'm sure you have. You have the HMIS system on a label. You have the NFPA fire triangle hazard label. They all mean the same thing. You can have one or the other, or if you have a secondary container, you can use your own labeling system as long as it meets the requirements of either that label or that original label. Well, this helps to get rid of all of it. It makes it a little bit easier. Again, it's a standardized approach to hazard classification, labels, and safety data sheets. So what does the change mean? We've all heard that word, no more MSDS. That's gone away. It's now just going to be SDS, or safety data. Warning and pictograms and hazard classes. They came up with a globally, like little symbols and that everyone now is supposed to understand. And again, implementation for this year is the one. All of us employees on the elements and the safety data sheets. A sample of what I looked at. I know that's a little blurry, but you're always going to see physical hazard or chemical characteristic, pictogram, and then a signal word. The rest of this, as it's being implemented, because we're not to December 1st yet, and we're in the USA and change. So it can change a little bit. As of right now, that's what it's going to look like. However, you can still have the PA triangle, you still have the hazardous material information sheet label on in-house or in-use containers, your secondary containers. But for distributors and modes of transport, DOT type containers, that will be what's on. Any questions on that? Cool. So this prevention program. How many of y'all have or have heard of constant workplace policy? Your written hazard plan, your written personal protective equipment policy. You have all of this different stuff. Well, as it says there, the I2P2 stands for an Injury and Illness Prevention Program. So all of those different individual policies and programs are now expected, if this passes, are now expected to be rolled up into one injury and protection program. Again, if this passes. The expectation after this last election year is that this will pass. Now, it is one of their things, as you can see. Assistant Secretary of OSHA called it the agency's highest priority. The 6 elements of OSHA necessary components of a successful prevention program are 6 elements of OSHA sees as necessary for a successful prevention program are management leadership, worker participation, hazard identification, hazard prevention, contribution and training, and program evaluation and improvement. So what does that mean to us in different industries and all of that? What that means is, again, no matter how many employees you have, if you engage in commerce, you're required to have these policies if they are relevant to your business operation. All rolled up into one, and you have to have management buy-in, you have to have worker participation, you have to identify the hazards, you have to have a means in place to prevent the hazards, you have to educate and train your employees, and you have to look at ways to improve the program as it continues on. So, you know, what does all that mean, Brian? What that means is they're looking for behavioral-based safety type programs now, meaning take the worker, take the supervisor, take a manager, take a safety representative, go out, look at a particular work task, put their heads together, good job, maybe this is how you get it done a little bit better. Why did you do it this way? But you get, the belief is you will get buy-in to the program. The program will be successful. Other than just being, you know, do it because it's written. That's the belief. Some believe that there will be a cost associated with this. Because how can a company or a business truly evaluate their program and improve it on their own without a conflict of interest? So party evaluation. If you are now, you may not see that cost. Care provides, but they will expect someone to come in and be that third party to take care of this for you. There is a cost associated with it, you know. So that's the two biggest things, that whole behavioral-based safety program and the third party evaluation. That's the two biggest things we have, other than holding all those individual programs up into one future prevention program. Any questions on the still not magic, big priority. If it happens, will happen. Continue to try to influence commerce. So let's look at prevention, workers' compensation, and loss control. NCCI, for those of you who are not familiar with that, that's your National Council on Comprehensive Insurance, Compensation Insurance for your workers, and how they rate insurance across the nation. We took a look at their experience formula and realized that it's huge. If you're the national average, I have a company in this industry, and they average 1 injury per year, then if you're good, you average less than 1. If you're not so good of a company and your insurance premium is more, your average is higher than 1. Realize it's way off. It's just all over the board, so there's no true determination on it. So, and this has happened, January 1. Primary losses, or the first 5,000 in workers' comp insurance, affects the mind more than excess losses do. That means the majority of time, and I'm not, if y'all thought that other stuff was boring, this can get really boring. So I'm just briefly going to touch over it. And if you have any questions, you can ask me afterward. But any company that carries workers' comp insurance, that first 5,000 is considered, or was considered, primary loss. A lot of times, depending on how it's set up, that was a direct loss associated with that business before it reached the insurance reserve premium. Does everybody follow what I'm saying? So that first 5,000 affects the modification. It was proposed to raise the split point from 5,000 to 15,000. Why? Insurance companies took a look at it and said, you know what? The cost of medical, the cost of an accident is greater now than it was 20 years ago. Right now, we're having to pay this burden because the insured, or the client, is only having to pay up to 5,000. If I'm the insurance company, I want to increase that too, because then it's back on that client and company all the way up to 50,000. So they said, yep, we can do it. It's going to occur over a 3-year period, again starting this past January. Now, most of your losses are under 5,000. this will possibly decrease your mod. If most of your losses are over 5,000, you can expect an increase in your experience modification. What does that mean? As they make this change from 5 to 15, if you go under 5,000, that's probably going to decrease your premium. If you go over 5,000, that's going to increase your insurance premium as far as workers' comp is concerned. So those greater than 1 are considered debit modifications. That is because the client or the company owes a debt to the insurance company. The credit modifications are those below 1.0 because the insurance company considers you are below that 1.0 average, so you are accredited. So that's where that comes into play. And again, they're doing this to get a truer look at that industry-wide average modification of 1.0 and base that implemented 15,000 over a 3-year period on that 1.0. Did that confuse everybody as much as I confused myself? Or does it kind of make sense? Because the more and more I talk about insurance, do we have any insurance people in here? I don't want to fit, do we? No?
Kind of, sort of.
Do you know what I'm talking about then? When I read, I'm just a safety guy and a pudgy old retired infantry guy. And the more and more I read about insurance and workers, I confuse myself. So I try to keep it simple. If you're rated across the country in your line of business, the insurance looks at it at 1.0 across the country. If you're above 1.0, your insurance premiums are going to increase. If you're below 1.0, your insurance premiums are going to decrease. Okay? That's the simplest way to say that. All right. Good. That straightened it up in my mind too. Good deal. All right. So any questions on this for me? Hopefully I didn't bore everybody too much. Before I get out of here, I love that picture. That is one of the employees working out of Cassandra's office.
Oh, it is. Come on.
I'm kidding. Before we all get back to work or whatever, I did have a couple things that I wrote down just as some final points. So if you'll bear with me for a little bit longer, I'll kind of read them. And I'm actually going to change the order up about this because one is pretty prevalent in the news right now. For every dollar that a company spends on an injured employee, it costs that company $2 to $3 per person. So if you're working in an office environment and you have daisy chained, like I have, 2 extension cords together to continue work throughout the day, and someone walks by and trips on it and they break their ankle, for every dollar that you physically spend on that injured employee for the length of their injury, it is costing you between $2 and $3 to manage that injured employee. Cassandra and I was just talking about it today. If you have an accident or an injury, in my opinion, that person, not only for their well-being, but to protect the company as well, that injury and that person automatically becomes the highest priority for your business. Again, number 1, for that employee, for that injured guy. But also, that's the only way we can do business today, is by managing that loss. Second point, for every dollar that you spend on the prevention of an accident or within your safety program, you will save $6 in the long run. That's a national true study fact. And I know you can play with numbers, and I'm sure the National Safety Council played with those numbers because they're trying to promote themselves. But I bet if you sit there and think about it, it passes the smell test, doesn't it? If I spend $1 on safety, in return, I'm going to save $6 or about that in return. Now that $1 is hard. Safety glasses, earplugs, they cost $1. You may see what I call monopoly money that you're saving in that insurance premium or whatever. But for every $1 spent, you'll save $6. The last thing I wanted to talk about was, and it's in the news a lot, I know Caldwell County is looking at it. I know some other, your larger cities, we have offices in Lexington and Louisville. Everyone's looking at it again, and that is your emergency action plan. With everything that goes on in the news and the shootings, and You know, I was talking today, it's a different workforce probably than even 10 or 20 years ago, the type of person that we're working with. I encourage everyone, if you have a business, to look really, really hard at an emergency action plan for your employees. If you have a one-person office, you know, write it down, turn it into your insurance company. Maybe they can work with you. But if it's a one or two person office, come up with a signal word, come up with, you know, if I'm after hours, we don't allow anyone in. I call my coworker who's off work and let them know that I'm working alone, but do something. You know, lock the doors and don't open it for anyone. Have an emergency action plan to the best of your financial and physical ability, and make sure all of your employees follow it. That's the best answer there is out there for that. Thank you. Holy, everyone say that.